Hi. Hi, and welcome to another Ask Us Anything live. Here we are today with my little piglet who is being a bit fussy, but we're just gonna go as best as we can because this Friday I had a really interesting question from one of my students asking about the subjunctive in English. So the subjunctive exists in many languages, and I think it's surprising to a lot of people that it actually does exist in English. And that is mainly because it's a little old-fashioned now in English, and English has evolved and it's almost being phased out of our language. So that's why a lot of people are surprised that we actually do have it. So what exactly is the subjunctive? Well, the subjunctive mood, because it's a mood, not a tense, is how you express hypothetical situations and outcomes in English. So it's the mood that you use to express wishes, hopes, desires, or any other imagined outcome you want to describe. So if you've ever written something that began with, if I were, you've used this subjunctive. So I mentioned that other languages have the subjunctive, so that's why this won't come as a surprise for many language learners. However, it's unlike other languages. In English, it's not a specific verb form because it's not a tense in English. So therefore, it's conveyed more through phrases and clauses and using the bare form of the verb to express the subjunctive. And so since English, as I mentioned, is a language that evolves all the time, some of these phrases that are meant to be used with the subjunctive have actually become a little old-fashioned. And so you see now the subjunctive being faded out and actually replaced with the conditional mood. So an example of this is, as I said, if I were. Now, this is typical and a typical subjunctive phrase. And you will have heard it in the song If I Were a Boy by Beyonce. Or, anytime someone is trying to give you advice, they often say, if I were you, I would do this. I would get a new job. I would talk to my boss. Okay? Now, you will also now start to see... Oh, la la. Oh, you want to still bite this? I know, we're not a happy baby today, are we? Yeah, there you go, bite this. So you will see that some native speakers will now say, if I was, or if she was me. So if I was you, or if she was me. So they're starting to use the conditional mood instead of the subjunctive. And it's just because the conditional mood is expressing very similar to the subjunctive. And to many native speakers, if I were just sounds so wrong. If she were just sounds so wrong. So they think they're actually correcting it by using was and in the conditional mood. So that's why I don't often talk about the subjunctive, because it is a grammar point that is being phased out of English. But let's look again. So what exactly is the subjunctive? So the past subjunctive refers to the mood used to describe things that you wish were true, that you had hoped had happened. So this kind of sentence uses the verb were to establish the hypothetical, in addition to using the and sometimes another verb in the bare base form. So, for example, without another verb, it would be I wish I was taller. So you see there, so I wish I were taller is a subjunctive, and I wish I was taller is the conditional. So you see, even now I myself said it with the conditional mood rather than subjunctive mood, because it's starting to become more natural. Another example, if she were taller, she would go on all the rides. If she were accepted, she would go, she would study chemistry at university. And so the present subjunctive uses the base form of the verb to discuss a present or future hypothetical. And so here are some examples with using the base form of the verbs. The base form is really just the infinitive with no to. So the coach recommended that he stop playing football. So we're not saying, we can say the coach recommended that he stopped playing football. We can actually just put that into the reported speech. Or we can use the subjunctive, like meaning in the hypothetical, the coach recommended that he stop playing football. So stop. I know it sounds odd, but given the new map we just brought, I ask that we adjust our trip. So adjust there is the subjunctive. He'll join the band on the condition that, and on the condition that is a phrase that we use with the condition, with the subjunctive, on the condition that he be a backup singer. Okay, so he be, I know it sounds odd, but that's the present subjunctive. So there are so the subjunctive is used after some of these verbs to express that urgency, that hypothetical urgency. So to advise that, to ask that, to command that, to demand that, to desire that, to insist that, to propose that. So it's careful, it's not to propose to get married, it's to propose a solution, and it's to suggest. It's a more formal way to say to suggest. To recommend that, to request that, to suggest that, to urge that. Okay, so Dr. Smith Dr. Smith asked that Mark submit his research paper before the end of the month. Donna requested Frank come to the party. The teacher insists that her students be on time. Okay, those are all classic subjunctive sentences. So again, because we like to phase out the subjunctive, we can also just put should, use the modal verb should. So for example, Dr. Smith asked that Mark should submit his research paper before the end of the month. Okay, her students should be on time. So remember, the subjunctive in English is to describe wishes, hopes, desires, and other hypothetical situations. And you can use it to describe something we hope will happen, or we want to happen, or something we imagine will happen, but the outcome is not concrete at all. Okay, it's so small and almost impossible to actually happen. That's why we use the subjunctive. And that's why many native speakers will prefer to use the conditional mood instead of subjunctive, because it's starting to sound more natural to our ears. And so you'll start to see less and less of the subjunctive now. But it was a really interesting question of one of my students, and I wanted to share it with you, how the subjunctive is not a very popular mood in English, but so that you know what it is. So I hope that has helped, and I hope to see you next Friday. I think I'm going to do next Friday, I'm going to do a reported speech, because that was another question from one of my students, Kairu. If you're watching, hello. And I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Bye from us.